Hey guys, welcome to my very first vlog. This is a little bit nerve-wracking for me because I have never really done these before, but a few other people on YouTube that I admire have tried this out recently and I thought I might give it a go. So I wanted to just talk a little bit about myself today. This is a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to talk about something that's difficult to talk about that happened to me in my life in the past, but I wanted to bring it up because I feel like it's something that needs to be talked about more, especially with mums who have been through this. And what I'm referring to is, as you know, I'm a mum of five. I have five amazing kids, and they range from, my oldest is 13, three boys, 13, 7, 6, and then two girls that are 3, 3.5, almost 4, and 14 months. I actually have had a sixth child, and she was my second child. And we lost her at 13 months old. And before I get into what happened with that, I just wanted to mention that I have been with my husband for almost 15 years. He is Navy. He's an ex-Navy officer. He's retired, but he is still in the reserves. So I still am involved a lot with the Navy situation. He is in Japan at the moment, actually, for training. So I still go through those moments or those periods of time where I'm by myself with my kids. But honestly, after this many years, I'm kind of used to it. I create a routine, and the kids, they're almost kind of used to it too. So I support him. I always have with the military. I never get jealous. I understand that's his job and that's what he does. So when we got married, it was about in 2001, and we were married for a couple of years, and we had our first child, Michael, and he's now 13. After 2 years, when he was about 2, we decided to try to have another child because my husband was on shore duty. Now, any military parents or mums or dads out there know that shore duty is basically 2 years, 2 to 3 years of time at home, and they have kind of a regular style job where they go to work from 9 to 5 and they come home, and they still have duty days where they go in for 24 hours, but it's a lot better than being at sea. So we thought that would be the perfect time to have our second child. So I ended up getting pregnant, which was really cool, and we found out, we went for a 20-week scan, which is when they check everything as far as the organs, and you can find out your gender as well. At that 20-week scan, I found out that my baby, which we ended up finding was a girl, had a heart condition. And at first because they couldn't see her whole heart. So they did another scan and they found out that she actually had an underdeveloped left side of her heart, which is called hypoplastic left heart syndrome. When we found that out, it was heartbreaking because at the time my midwife wasn't aware that there is actually a series of 3 surgeries that these children can go through, reconstructive heart surgery that actually allows them to live fairly normal lives, and the survival rate is quite high. So we didn't know that at first. She ended up calling me back and telling me at work that there was, because I was working at the time when I found this out, I was out at work, and she called me back and said, oh, there are these surgeries that they can do and there is a high chance of survival. Mind you, before that, I was bawling my eyes out because I didn't think, because she first told me that, oh, well, there's nothing they can really do, and they usually they carry to term and they don't survive. So can you imagine how I felt after that? So when I did find out that she had a chance of survival, we decided to go through with the pregnancy, and to the very end, I had to go through a lot of scans, a lot of stress tests. Anybody who's had high-risk pregnancies would understand that for sure. I actually had her premature at, I think she was 35 weeks, so she was 5 weeks premature, which was tough as well, so she was tiny. They did the first surgery at birth, and she did all right, but they did come back and say that she's got very small veins. And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. And so we just continued on. She was in the hospital for a good while, came home for 3 months, went back for the next surgery. Actually, she came in for like 10 days. 10 days, went back for the next surgery, got through the second one, but after that, it just went downhill. It was a roller coaster. It was up and down. We lived about an hour away. She was at Children's Hospital DC, which by the way is an amazing children's hospital. They are so good there. If you ever have experienced that, you'll know what I mean. So we couldn't be there all the time. And we still had my son, who was 3 at the time, 2.5, 3. So we were driving back and forth every couple of days. We'd get phone calls saying she's fine and then saying she's not fine. They ended up getting to the point where my husband said, look, just tell us everything, because we'd call and they say, oh, she's fine. And we say, no, we want to know every single detail about what's going on. Don't just tell us she's fine. So we got very well educated during that period of time. Got to the point where she was on the ventilator so much that it ended up damaging her lungs, and she'd get fluid buildup between her lung and her chest cavity, and they'd have to drain that. And I think all up, she was only home 3 months out of her life. And it was hard, because we both went through periods of time when my husband was mad because he couldn't fix her, and I was upset because I knew she wasn't going to survive. And it was an up and down the entire time. We ended up having her go back into the hospital. She was only home for about 2 months. She went back and didn't come out. She ended up getting a trach put in at one point. She had a peg put in to feed her. And once the trach went in, I knew she wasn't going to come home. And it was just one of those reality checks. And as time went on, it got to the point where nothing was improving. She was just getting worse and worse. And we had to have a sit down with the doctors. And they said, look, we can keep her alive if you want, but there's no chance she's going to get better. So we had to make the decision to let her go. And it was either wait until she goes on her own and may not make it back in time to be there, or organize it to take her off the life support and have her go with us. So we chose the second option because of how far away we lived. So we went in and we took her off and we held her until she passed away. And that was probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do. And it's something that I don't like to think about, but I have to remind myself, because that is a part of what we went through, and that is part of what made me who I am now. When you go through something like this with a child that's sick, and you realize that how lucky you are to have your healthy children. Like after we had her, Kayanna was her name, by the way. We've had 4 children since then that have been healthy. But every time I would get pregnant and I would go for that 20-week scan, I would be scared as hell, because I just didn't know. I didn't know if it was going to happen again. And they would always be extra careful in checking the hearts of every child that I've had in those scans. And everyone, thankfully, has been fine. So it was just one of those fluky conditions that happens. And I know that there are a lot of people out there that go through this. When Kayanna was in the hospital, there was a wing of the hospital specifically put aside for children with this condition, with hypoplastic left heart syndrome. And not many people know what it is. I tell them, and they kind of look at me confused. And I said, well, it's just that it's not growing. It didn't grow the same rate as the other side. What ended up happening with Kayanna was that not only did she have the heart condition, she also had a genetic condition with her veins, where they weren't growing fast enough to accommodate her size. So, and after being on the ventilator for so long and it damaging her lungs so much, she just couldn't cope. So that it was a combination of everything, and it was a very fluky thing to happen. It's not something that's genetically passed down. They haven't found a connection to any of that. It just happens. And of course, I went through a period of time where I blamed myself, thinking that I did something during the pregnancy. And then my husband went through a period of time where he blamed himself because he couldn't do anything. As a parent, you want to fix your child. If they're sick, you want to be there. You want to make them better. We couldn't make her any better. So I know this is a bit of a depressing first vlog, but I wanted to share that story because I know there are a lot of parents out there that go through this, and you tend to close off. You tend to close yourself off and try to deal with it internally, and you don't have to. You can talk to people. You can talk to me. I will leave my contact details down the bottom, my Facebook and my Instagram, and you can message me and you can talk to me about anything that you're going through, because I really understand. I felt the same way. I tried to deal with it myself. I went to work and I was normal and smiling and happy as much as I could be, but when I came home, I just lost it, because that's the only way that you can deal with it. You don't have to. You can talk to other people, and I am happy to help anybody who is going through that if you want to message me and talk to somebody who understands. So that was probably the worst thing that has happened in my life so far, is losing that child. But I am so blessed to have my other children. And now, as I move on, they all know about Kayanna. They all talk about her. Even my kids who have never met her say they miss her and they want to see her. And I say, well, she's with the angels and she's okay. So that happened 11 years ago. And I still think about her, but I know she's in a better place. And a part of my guilt was when she passed away, I felt guilty because I felt a relief. I felt a sense of relief for me and for her, because not only she wasn't suffering anymore, she was happier. You want to think that, don't you? Even if you don't believe in that, you want to feel like your child is no longer in pain. And so I now know that it was for the best what we did, but at the time it still hurt like hell. So there you go. So that's my story. That's my first vlog to tell you what has shaped me as a person now, what has helped me deal with all my kids, and what we go through now is, having been through that, nothing else seems as important, as dramatic, I should say. So hopefully that will help some people understand that it can happen to anybody. Don't feel like you did anything. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just happens, and it sucks. Trust me. So I want to try and do these vlogs every Friday because my kids are all in school and I have some time to myself. So I promise the next one won't be so depressing. I will talk about some of the things that I've been through in my life and see how that relates to you guys out there, and also things that are going on at the time. So I hope you have a wonderful Friday, and I hope you at least enjoyed a little bit of what I was talking about, and I hope if it relates to you, feel like that you're not alone and you have support. So have a great day, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.